Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks, and thanks for inviting me down today. I've come down from Scotland, so if I fall asleep on the stage, I apologise for that in advance. It was a very, very early start this morning at 4 a.m, and every mode of transport possible broke down and was delayed on the way here. But I am absolutely delighted to have finally made it. I came to the event last year and thought it was wonderful, which is why I was very, very keen and very, very pleased to be asked to contribute this year. My substantive post is a deputy head teacher at Musselburgh Grammar School in East Lothian, so I don't come from the higher education or the further education sector, but I'm currently seconded to Learning and Teaching Scotland, which is our government-funded agency responsible for ICT in schools and also administering the curriculum in Scotland. And the specific project that I work on is something called the Consolarium, and the whole idea of the Consolarium, since it was created 3 years ago now, is to look at how we can use computer games in the classroom, and I'll pass some links and make sure that we've got some links that are available for that if anybody is interested. I thought during the course of the presentation I want to sort of cover a number of points. I hope I don't ramble too much. I hope they make sense. But I thought it might be quite useful to start with just to talk a little bit about why games. And for me, this really does come back to what I believe that learning actually is. And I believe that within the school sense, that if we really want learning to take place with our classes and with the children that are in our care, first of all, that we've got to have good pedagogy. For me, number one, that's the most important thing. We've got to have good teachers driving the pedagogy. And the second thing is we need to have activities that are either interesting or engaging. And I make a distinction between those two words because I think if you've got a class of students that find the activity interesting and you've got good pedagogy, I think learning is really going to blossom. But sometimes, for whatever reason, I've got a group of students that aren't really interested in the content, but we still have to deliver it to them because maybe it's in the end of course assignment or something like that. And therefore, I think it really helps then if we can try and make the activity engaging. And I think by its very definition, the use of technologies in schools, in colleges and higher education as well, can be real opportunities to engage our students. And I think that's what we should be concentrating on. How can we use these technologies to really make learning blossom? So why games-based learning then? Because about 3 or 4 years ago when we started this project, the whole sort of notion of introducing computer games into the classroom, people thought that we were mad. We were almost taken away, in little white suits and things like that. But so why are we doing this? Well, there's a couple of reasons really. First of all, is that I believe that good teachers use good tools. And I'm not saying that computer games are appropriate all of the time in our classrooms or our lecture theatres or for home learning activities, but I do think that they're appropriate some of the time. And I think it's about teachers using the best possible tools to get a maximum amount of engagement out of our students. And of course, if you speak to any teacher and you say to them, have you ever used play when you're working with your students before? They will often say yes. And I think if we look at different forms of play, if we're engaging with children or if we're engaging with young adults or even adult learners, we've always used play, in order to develop learning tasks. And whether that's a form of traditional play, whether that's a form of play as it's become more mechanicalised over time, or whether that's the latest kind of paradigm shift in the use of games consoles or computer games, I don't think it matters. I think it's still play, and I still think there's a place for every single type of play with our students and with learning to happen. And I guess what I'm really talking about then is I'm going to focus on computer games, but I'm really talking, I think about the use of games as a teaching methodology. And by teaching methodology, I mean kind of like playful learning. All right? And I wonder if we take any game, whether it's a board game or whether it's a video game, whether it's something else, and if we say, well, what do these games offer? Then normally the reason that we play these games is because there's some degree of challenge. Normally they offer some degree of progression. They get harder as we go through it. And normally there's some type of reward at the end of that as well, whether that's coming first or coming second or any of these things. And of course with computer games, we can augment this a little bit more because increasingly computer games are becoming a lot more personalised, and also they're happening in real time with real-time collaboration as well. And then I wonder if we take those kind of 5 words there and if we say, well, wouldn't it be really, really great if our classrooms and our lecture theatres were like that? If they were challenging, if they were progressive, if they were provided rewards to our students, if they were personalised, if they happened in real time, then would actually give us a really, really interesting space, for students to learn. So that's where I'm coming from, really, in terms of computer games. Of course, the other thing that we know about computer games is that they're incredibly competitive. That's one of the reasons that makes them addictive. But they're also non-threatening as well. And isn't it interesting, again, to take some of the concepts of computer games, perhaps for some of our more reluctant learners, and to try and use the analogy of a computer game to help them with their learning. So why, for example, is it okay to get 10 out of 20 in Dr. Kawashima's maths training and then to practice and practice and practice until you get 20 out of 20? but if you get 10 out of 20 and you do it on a piece of paper, you don't want to do it again because you're embarrassed. You know, what is there about that notion of using the kind of games console that really helps students want to practice, you know, and wants to kind of get better with their things? And I think it's because of this. I think it's because of games and games consoles have actually got a real kind of cultural relevance to young people. Yeah, and also they've got this kind of non-threatening interface as well. And I think that's important and things that we'll sort of try and take forward during the course of this presentation. Because actually, a lot of the games that we've been introducing into Scottish schools, and a lot of games and games consoles that Scottish schools are now buying, are completely commercial and they're off the shelf. You know, they're not built for education. I mean, let's be honest, right? There's been a huge amount of really, really bad education games that have been made, and children have tolerated them because it's better than what they would normally do, right? But they're not actually learning, you know, a lot of the time. Whereas actually, we kind of believe that if we can take some of these kind of commercially available off-the-shelf games, these games that are being made for entertainment, perhaps, as long as we've got good pedagogy, we can retrofit those for education as well, as long as it's driven by the teacher, right? Because the teacher, you know, is the learning architect. And I want to pick up on a couple of these themes to start with. And the first theme I guess I want to pick up on is this whole kind of notion of a contextual hub. And let me just kind of explain what I mean by that, and I hope that I explain it okay. I'm not a Star Trek fan, all right? Now, I can guarantee that at this type of conference, there will be several Star Trek fans in the audience, all right? Who, when I make a statement in the moment that's factually inaccurate about Star Trek, I know that I'm going to get lynched on the way out, all right? So I apologise for that in advance, all right? But do you remember that very, very first, you know, series of Star Trek where, you know, there was Captain Kirk and Spock, and the guy in the red jumper always died within the first 20 minutes? You always knew he was going to get it, don't you, all these things? Well, the interesting thing about, obviously, Star Trek and that initial series was that there was actually quite a lot of, you know, risky television that took place in the Star Trek series. Right? So, for example, the first ever televised interracial kiss occurred on an episode of Star Trek. Right? But it was okay, right, because it was a programme about space travel. Right? And what's my point? Well, my point is this. Right? My point is this. Because there's loads and loads of moral and interesting issues that are put forward in Star Trek. My point is this, is that sometimes I think it's absolutely okay to make children think they're learning about one thing, right? But you've got the teacher driving the pedagogy, and actually they're learning about lots of other wonderful things which are to do with the curriculum and the direction that you want to take them in. And let me give you an example. You maybe recognise these characters here, right? These are 3 characters. They were the mascots from the Winter Olympic Games in Vancouver this year. Now, there'll be lots and lots of classrooms all around the country that will have done projects on the Winter Olympic Games. You know, I can link that to science in terms of, you know, friction. I can link it to kind of numeracy and maths activities in terms of league tables and speed and distance and time, all of these things. Health and well-being in terms of, you know, drugs testing. I could springboard the whole of my curriculum right around the Winter Olympics. But perhaps sometimes it might be more engaging to a group of 6 or 7-year-olds to contextualise that around Mario and Sonic at the Winter Olympics. Right? To think about using that computer game, you know, as the contextual hub, and then linking all of the areas of the curriculum in the same way that we would do it always, you know, to these different areas of the curriculum. And that's what we did, you know, in one of the classes. And I've shown this slide at a conference before. It's a little bit dark, and apologise you can't see that. But it's some children, right, and they're playing on the Nintendo Wii, right, and they're playing the speed skating game. And what are they doing? Well, they're spending 1.5 minutes at the start of the lesson gathering all the data that they need for the teacher's 20 minutes maths activity. Right? But they're doing it and they're gathering the information and they're feeding it back. Right? But because it's about the computer game, or they think it's about the computer game, of course it's not. Right? They're highly engaged by the activity taking place, you know, in the first place. And again, these are just some pictures of some work from Gavinburn Primary School in East Dunbartonshire, where the whole of the timetable was completely suspended, you know, as children did work around Mario and Sonic, for children that were 7, 8 and 9. And the thing that we noticed the most, is it possible to dim these lights slightly? I can't, the slides aren't showing up. The thing that we noticed the most was the actual real quality of writing that took place. Right, the children would write and write and write and write and write because they were interested in the activities, right, but also because we believe that they were interested in the computer game. This is an example here of a medal table that was created. And the interesting thing about this medal table is that Norway's medal's been taken away. Right, and the reason that Norway's medal's been taken away is because the Olympic Committee found that actually Norway had been experimented with drugs testing, right? And that's how the teachers introduced drugs and alcohol and substance abuse, you know, into the learning for this particular group of children. But all, again, contextualised around this idea of a computer game. Of course, there's no point in doing a project on the Winter Olympics if we don't actually use technology to support the pedagogy. Right, so what about a live video conference using our national intranet, or could be use Skype or anything really, to actually link up schools, in this case here, from Scotland to a school near Alberta in Canada. Of course, it's quite a difficult thing to do because of the time zones, but there's a lot of learning that takes place in that as well. So actually what happened is the Canadian teacher that the school partnered with this just kept her class in school all night. All right? So they got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's why you can see in the pictures there that the children are, are still in their pyjamas. They're a little bit sleepy, a bit like me. All right? And of course, the children think this is a project about the computer game. All right? Maybe they think it's a little bit of a project about the Winter Olympics, but of course, actually, this is a project about collaboration. This is a project about talking, but it's also really a project about time zones. Right? And again, that's how the teacher is introducing some of these, ideas as well. And I went to visit this school, and I thought it was particularly interesting because I went in to visit is that one of the classrooms is they were learning some Japanese, and let's just see if this works. And you've been doing some work on Mario and Sonic at the Winter Olympics, haven't you? Yeah. And have you been enjoying that work? Yeah. Yeah. Now listen, as part of the work, I've noticed that you've been doing some work around learning different languages, and I can see from looking around this room in here that it's full of lots of beautiful work really to do with Japan. Right, because that's the country you've been representing, isn't it? Yeah. So tell me a little bit then. Who could tell me a little bit about some of the work you've been doing with Japan?
Mr. Pendleton, he made up some languages for us, and he put them in iTunes for us. So then we bought them, and we started playing them, and they all had different languages on them. And then started saying like how you say hello, goodbye, and what is your name.
Okay, so you got some things from Mr. Pendleton, right? And you put them in iTunes so that you could listen to them.
Yeah.
So who could tell me a word that you learnt and then perhaps what it means in English? Yeah? Can you give me one?
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. And what does that mean?
That means hello.
That means hello. Who can give me another one?
Sayonara.
What does that mean?
Goodbye.
It means goodbye. Got any more? Hang on a minute, I think there's And what does that mean?
What is your name?
What is your name? All right. Now, I was absolutely gobsmacked by that, for a number of reasons, as you think. I was quite genuinely shocked when that came out. But I think the important thing here is that that's a group of very, very young children, right, who have been downloading, language podcasts to help them learn different languages, in a variety of different languages. But then I actually said to the class, well, I would quite like to learn how to speak that. And I'm not going to play this video now, but I'll make sure it's available up online. Is that they then sent me a podcast that they produced themselves, teaching me how to say that phrase. All right, so not only are they downloading that learning and taking part in it and learning it, but then they're deconstructing that and thinking about how I would want to do that as well. Now, these are pretty complex skills, right, where young people have been engaged through this different type of technology. And I'm conscious that, that the speaker after me is going to be talking about augmented reality. Right, and I'm not going to talk a lot about augmented reality and how it works, but again, we've been using commercially available augmented reality for the Sony PlayStation 3. This is the Sony iPet. It's basically a virtual pet that you can have in your classroom. Now, we've been putting this into nursery schools where children have been looking after their virtual pets. They've been doing topics about pets. They've been learning about pets. Some of them have even been bringing their own pets in. Right, but then they've been taking their virtual pet with them when they've gone up to the first year of primary school, right, to try and keep that consistency there as well. So we've been using this, as a contextual hub again. But you can see, absolutely captivated by what's happening on the screen. The characters augmented on top, of the computer screen. So again, different ways in order to do it, and again, completely linked to different areas of the curriculum. Right? Any computer game puts out data. If it puts out data, then we've got lots and lots of maths. We've got lots and lots of numeracy activities that are in there as well. Now, these are very, very young children. These are just in primary 1, 5 or 6-year-old that are doing all this different types of work to drive the writing. And I guess what I'm saying here is that all of these games are for commercial use, but for me the challenge is trying to get teachers to think a little bit more creatively. Because there's nothing that I'm describing here that is complicated. The children can turn on the games consoles and they can play the games, right? And the teachers have done projects on pets, they've done projects on the Olympics for years. It's just kind of joining the two together. And we've got lots and lots of examples of different commercially available games that we've used in Scottish schools to sort of drive learning. And I've shown you purposely some primary examples today, but we've also got some examples of the secondary school as well, in particular to support different areas of literacy. The other thing that I think is important that we think about is how we learn from games. All right, because this is important. I've already mentioned that, that we sometimes get quite bad education games. But this whole idea of learning from games as well and what we can do. And again, there are, I think, some good products that are available which are helping young people support key aspects of the curriculum. One of them is Manga High. I don't know whether you've come across that before. Very, very popular in schools in England. Again, I think it's a really, really good product because it's backed up by proper academic work, but reinforced then with the kind of creative aesthetic that goes with it as well, rather than just being either done creatively, or being done academically. And again, it's just ways of playing kind of mini games for young people to solve fairly complex maths problems. And we've had this in some secondary schools in Glasgow, and we've got 17 or 18-year-olds supporting the equivalent of A-level or higher maths that we would use for this as well. But again, they can be accessed from home, it can be played by home, it can be played on this kind of mobile device. And again, there are other things as well, if we talk about this kind of playful approach. Microsoft Office, Ray was talking before about Microsoft products. I think one of the interesting things that Microsoft have done is that they've actually incorporated a mini game called Ribbon Hero into some Microsoft Office products. And by doing this as well, what it means is that young people can kind of keep a score and they can go through some of the things. And we put this in some schools in Stirling, it's just a kind of free download. And again, it's been very, very positive. It's that kind of playful, competitive approach. And then young people can add the social aspect to it as well because they can share their scores with Facebook and other things. So again, it's bringing in a lot of these ideas together. And then, of course, we've got other games which, again, are kind of commercially available, but perhaps I think more suited to the education market, things like Brain Training and Big Brain Academy. And again, this is doing traditional skills, but perhaps in a different way. Have a look at this video. I don't know if you've played Brain Training before. 20 sums.
That's the fastest I've seen any school child do that. That's your best time? No? That's your best time. 9?
Right. Now I've kind of sat, all morning watching children trying to do 20 sums, very, very quickly. So what is it, right? Whether we agree with it or not, what is it about that interface, and what is it about the way that these children are able to build up a relationship with that character in the game, and how can we capitalise on that, in different aspects of learning? And the last thing I just want to cover, and I'm conscious of time that I'll need to be quiet in a second, is just this kind of notion of creating content. Right? Getting young people to kind of create content. And we're very, very lucky in Scotland, I think, because we've got a big drive at the moment on games design. In fact, games design is mentioned in our new curriculum explicitly in the primary stage and in the secondary stage. And we're at the moment trying to develop a suite of tools to support schools between the ages of 3 to 18. And it's all available online, and anybody can take it. We're not particularly protective over any of it. But this whole idea where we're trying to get young people to start off creating games in this 2D environment, right, and then think about the kind of skills progression, the complexity of tools as they move into this 3D world. And as I've mentioned, we have got it written into the curriculum now. It does specifically say games, and we have got a qualification structure to support that. Just like anything, though, in order to support these things, is you've got to train teachers, haven't you? Right? Because a lot of teachers aren't necessarily sort of not competent or maybe a little bit wary of using some of these tools. So we're spending a bit of time at the moment with some face-to-face contact, but also making sure that we've documented all of this stuff online so that it's basically available anytime, anywhere. And partly that is via forums, and partly that is via elsewhere. I'm rushing slightly because I just kind of want to cover this, because these are a couple of really, really good free tools that are available at the moment. One of them is Kodu. It comes from Microsoft Research. You can download it for your Xbox. You can download it for your PC. Children love it because you can plug in your Xbox controller into your PC, right, and it's a free download, and you can get an Xbox controller very, very cheaply, and it gives the impression of actually developing games for the Xbox. And you can create these kind of really quite wonderful, 3D immersive environments, straight away, where we're able to gather different stages of feedback, where we're able to introduce some basic programming schools. But also we're very interested in how some of these games can be used to support literacy, because just like any computer game, if we can write into it, we can use that to drive that area of the curriculum forwards. And also how it can be used to support numeracy and science as well. Right, because just like any game generator, if we change the variables, what does that teach us about friction? You know, what does that teach us about other aspects of science and services as well? In fact, we do believe, obviously, that computing and computing science has got a massive role to play in games design, right? But I think it's a lot wider than that, right? And actually, if we're going to get young people really, really excited about technology, and if we can get them excited about technology with the right pedagogy, we can get them excited about learning, yeah, then maybe actually computer games and combined computer game collaborative projects can be a really, really interesting way to go about that. I don't know if anybody here plays games, but you might be able to recognise the shadow of some of these characters here. Now, that hasn't just come about by chance. That's just come about because people are really, really good at marketing these products, right? So there's marketing and business, you know, which is linked into this as well. In fact, what about designing characters that respond to different names? So if I was going to describe a grumpy, nothing terribly special about a life person, faced a life in a nursing home, wants peace and solitude, compared to a very, very happy person with friends all around him, open to new ideas and adventures, what would they look like? What would the shape be? What would the art and design, you know, implications of this? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because is this a kind of grumpy person? Are they quite square? Just quite happy? I don't know. How does that kind of fit into some of the characters that we may have seen, you know, when they've been designed, you know, within our kind of popular culture there? All right, so lots of really, I think, you know, quite interesting things to mention. And I just put this video in right at the last minute because I was lost this morning as I was walking here late. And somebody said that this building had been used in a Batman film. And I don't think it was this particular Batman film. This is Arkham Asylum, but one of the games that we've introduced, or one of the games design softwares that we've introduced for older children, the 17 or 18-year-olds, was used to develop this Batman game. And it's free. It's called the Unreal Development Kit. Incredible graphics. But what we can do, obviously, is we can take this game creator, and as long as we're not going to sell the games for any profit, we can do some pretty amazing things with it.
So I'm going to zoom in on the Tower of London, and as you know, Google Earth has a number of 3D models in it, and these models are available on the Google 3D warehouse. So from the warehouse, we can download the particular model, save it to the computer, and we can actually import that, retexture it in the Unreal Development Kit, which you can see now. So this is the model that's been loaded here. So wouldn't it be great if we play a game in this Tower of London? So here we are, using a first-person view. Wander around. There's a spaceship. I wonder if we can actually go into the spaceship and fly around it. Now, from this view, up here, we can look at all the architecture, see how the fortifications have been put together. And this land in the central tower here, I can see the view that it gives you in the whole area. So, this actually puts in context the architecture that we've got in this set of building.
So, what's my point? Well, my point is that those tools that I've just demonstrated to you there are free, or most of them are free, or that lots of these young people have these tools, you know, already in the first place. And I think the expectation of our learners, you know, over the next 5 to 10 years, never mind the expectation of how technology changes, but the expectation of our learners over the next 5 to 10 years, you know, is going to be really, really important in terms of what they can do, what they want to do, if we want to engage them in education, whether that's in schools, colleges or universities. Thank you very much.